Greetings, beloved ones, and welcome to this special conversation that we will be having for the next 6 meetings. This conversation, which I hope to have with you, is of great importance at this time for everyone, really for everyone alive on the planet, but especially for those people who are in the United States. Why is it important to have this conversation about the spiritual history and destiny of America? The reason, beloveds, is that it is of utmost importance at this time and for the future that we understand how to align with a positive vision of the future, of this country, and of ourselves and of the world. This is difficult to do for many people because the currents of energy pulling in the opposite direction towards discouragement, disillusionment, conflict, and polarization are very strong. And so it is of utmost importance that we learn how to do this, to stabilize ourselves in a positive vision of the future, which includes a positive vision of this country. So how do we have a positive vision? What is the ingredient that stabilizes this for us? The answer I propose to you tonight is that it involves trust, but not just trust in human effort, trust in the divine, trust in what we call the divine plan for the earth. Some of you may have heard me speak of this divine plan before, and I'm going to talk again about what it involves, because ordinarily human beings hold the earth as a solitary object in space. We are on this planet, we're together, we are inhabitants of a globe that we recognize has certain characteristics. But that's not the reality. The reality is that this earth is part of a larger organism, a larger being, and a larger universe. And that everything that we do here, everything, is related to what happens in the solar system, the galaxy, and beyond. You perhaps do not think like that, and I don't expect you to believe me because I'm saying this, but I want to explain a few things to you on the level of an interactive universe that has determined to create a planetary focus of attention at this time, which is the earth. And this focus of attention has to do with the benefits to the earth and to the universe of moving into a higher vibration of light. So let me say a few things about the divine plan for the earth. And I urge you to, as always, consider what level of reality this has for you. If you wanted to plan your own future, in any case, in any way, at any time in your life, what would you do? You would think about it. You'd feel, what did you want to bring into being? What did you want to have happen? You'd feel something. You would think about how does it get accomplished? And you would feel perhaps a yearning to bring whatever it is that you were planning into being, because you would feel attracted to that goal, whatever the goal might be. That's how a plan takes place. You think of something, you use thought to imagine how it might come into being, and there's an attractive force that draws you to it, otherwise you wouldn't be thinking it's worth doing. And that attractive force is something that resembles love. That is, you have a love for that which you're trying to create, for your own life. This universe operates on the same principle. The principle of divine will, divine thought, and divine love coming together to create something that would be an extension of what already exists, an extension. This is a perspective that not everybody holds, that the universe is evolving. And I ask you to consider that, because in order to hold the earth in a positive vision, you need to hold as a premise that everything is evolving. The universe is evolving because of the thought that's behind it, the mind of the one, and the earth is evolving because of the intentionality of that divine thought to bring the earth into a different stage of its development. The divine plan is the plan that was set forth. There are other words for it. You could say it was ordained, or you could say it was written, or you could say it was just thought of before time began. The divine plan was what created the universe, in the same way that you make a plan for yourselves. You think of it, you will it, and you're attracted to it. This universe is evolving, and the plan for the earth was that a planetary being would take on the role of being the habitat for beings who wanted to explore individuality. The planetary being is the earth that determined to become the home for those souls that wanted to explore their own personal freedom, the freedom to choose, the freedom to make good choices, bad choices, etc. This is the purpose of duality, that it gives rise to freedom to choose. And there are a whole group, large group of souls that have come here, including yourselves, to be able to experience your own individual destiny, your own individual choice about what to become. Out of this freedom to choose and focus on individuality comes a result which is brought along with it, which is that the intrinsic, original sense of being united with all else in creation, that is part of your soul nature, became increasingly separated from your outer self. It didn't disappear, but your soul is still holding that. But your outer self, your embodied self that's traveling around in your days, began to not remember that it was connected to the rest of the universe. And that's the nature of what we call duality, that everything seems separate from everything else. Seems that way. So this was part of the plan for the earth, this development of individuality and its result in greater degree of separation. It was known that this would happen because before, remember your own idea about planning something, before you make a plan, you have to have a thought of what you want to do. It's the same with the creation. The mind of God existed before time began because it's a unified consciousness beyond time, and put things in motion to develop a creative process full of light energy that would create time and space and form and individuality in the earth and the rest of the universe. But what needed to happen for the earth was that a way had to be found that separation from reality would only go so far and not reach a destructive potential, would only go so far with human beings making decisions based on the idea that they were alone and separate from each other and separate from everything else. This was part of what was known before time. And so that original thought related to evolution was that the earth was going to participate in a cycle, the cycle by which things would become individualized and separate, and then the return cycle by which things would rejoin the original unity. That is the divine plan for the earth. That is what was set in motion before time began. That is the reason that we are at a turning point right now, because the movement from the one cycle to the other is happening right now. And what it involves for those beings who are here on the planet to be here is the pull towards the past cycle. Moving towards separation is still hanging there, is still around. And the soul's movement towards the new cycle is pulling everything towards unity and the higher vibration, which is fifth dimensional consciousness, unified consciousness. We're in the third dimension. This is fifth dimensional consciousness. Fourth dimension is time. Time is linked to the third dimension, but it's a good question. We didn't lose it. We didn't lose it. Now, how does this relate to America? How does this relate to the picture of nations? Everything that you have ever read about the history of this country, everything that you have read about the colonization, the settling, the colonies being established in different states, the way the Articles of Confederation were developed, the Constitutional Convention, and so forth, and the development of the Constitution, all those founding ideals that were part of, including the transit from Europe to the United States, including that, were part of the growth of the foundation of this country, were infused by the guardianship of the earth. And I asked you to read some things about the guardianship of the earth, because I want you to know that the earth is not alone, has never been alone, and the input from the higher realms of light has been constant over millennia and also right now. So if you think about, let's say, what inspired the Europeans to come here to this country, it was an idea of freedom. Many came because of religious freedom, some came because of economic freedom, but it was freedom. Freedom is an ideal. Freedom is an energy. Freedom is part of what human beings are meant to have as part of their essential nature of creation. That ideal was inspired by both the human need to escape from persecution on the human level, and on the divine level, the activation of the soul energy of those beings who came here and then who later manifested the documents that produced this country. Now, as I'm speaking about the ideal, you have to understand, and you do understand, that I'm not talking about what happened in this country. I'm not talking about what was able to be put into practice. That's a whole other story. I'm talking about the way the higher realms of light interact with human evolution and development to inspire ideals so that the ideals will awaken and so that human action will take place. And that input of inspiration and activation has been going on for as long as this country has been coming into being, in all the founding aspects of it. The Declaration of Independence was inspired by the realms of light through the mind of Jefferson. The Constitution was inspired by the realms of light through the force of the ideal of one nation, the ideal of unity, overcoming all of the factionalism and disunity that was so present in that particular period of time. People and states pulling in all kinds of directions that, as you've heard me say before, it was a miracle that this nation came into being at all. But how did that happen? It happened because the inspiration of unity as a possibility and what that would bring was operating on multiple levels. On the practical level, it was thought of as a way of unifying currency and being able to pay back debts and finding protection with a unified militia against foreign invasion. There were all kinds of practical reasons that each state had and held for why it should come together with other states. But more than that was needed. The sense of possibility was needed and of hope in the future in order to get past all of the power struggles that were going on at that time. And there were many. So those of the light were influencing and were part of the founding conventions, all of them. Some of you may have been to Monticello, the Jefferson's home, and the place of what's now a museum and a tour and all that kind of stuff. But that place where the Declaration of Independence was written, even today, holds the vibration of light from the realms of light. I don't know what you'd feel if you go there, but it was my experience when I was there a number of years ago. This guardianship of the earth is a premise that one needs to hold in the presence of what looks like descending spirals of negativity, descending spirals of conflict in so many places. This premise means that things cannot be destroyed, that they can go into periods of great difficulty and conflict, but they can't be destroyed. The earth can't be destroyed, and the divine plan, which is ordained from before time began, can't be undone. Ordained means it has to happen. Not that it might happen, it has to happen. The force of the universe that created the universe is behind and is upholding the future of this country. And that is what I want you to hold on to when I say something about divine trust. The force of the universe that created all things is upholding the future of this country. And it operates through the planetary guardianship of those of the realms of light who actively inspire human consciousness in order to foster or strengthen the force of light within groups and within particular individuals and so on. Those of the light operate as a group consciousness of one mind. They are agents of the divine, moved only by divine will. They don't have independent will like human beings do. They are moved entirely by divine will. So the movement as to what divine timing is and what has to happen comes from the source of that timetable of creation, the source of evolution, through the realms of light, and then is introduced into those beings on this planet who are particularly open to the will and messages of those of the light, which are quite many at this time, not all in the same vibration, but there are many people who are attuned to these forces now, because the forces of light are upholding the ideals of what's possible. And those people who are disappointed in this country are believing, or let's say many of them are believing, and maybe yourselves included, that ideals and practice can't get together. They've sort of looked at 250 years and slavery and the marginalization of groups of people and prejudice and horrible treatment of many groups of people and say, this is human nature. No, beloved ones, it is not. It is human nature in a state of separation. It is not human nature. Human nature is what human beings can become, not what they have been doing in a state of separation. That state grew out of the premise of aloneness and not feeling connected to the rest of the universe. That is the past, And that's why I'm talking to you tonight. Because in your daily life and in your conversations with people and in your looking at what's happening in this country and in your anticipation in the future, every day is a choice now about what to believe. Every day, what to believe. And as you know, I don't have to tell you this, there are different versions of truth that are rampant about what is a fact, what is truth, what to hold. Every day is a choice about what to believe. And in order to have a positive vision of the future, there needs to be trust in the divine on the level that I'm saying, that which has created the universe is upholding the future of this country and will manifest just like it did in the past, just like it pulled together 13 states that had no real fire and of enthusiasm to get together. There was more fire to stay apart, more enthusiasm, but the necessity of the time, plus the inspiration from the light within each of the individuals that were part of that process, brought something together that was a miracle. And we are living in the time of the Second Constitutional Convention. We're not clearly together in a place, but we are together in a time that is actually the same time. We are together in a time of needing to develop a new Republic of America. And the foundation for that is happening now. It's happening in the presence of those forces that are pulling towards the past, pulling towards division, and pulling towards conflict and hopelessness. And that's why I say the most important thing for you to know how to do now is to align with the positive vision of the light for yourself, the light for human beings, the light for this country. There's nothing more important than that, because the energies that go in the other direction, they're there, but you need to not be involved with them, because alignment is what is going to make the change, not having a fight with other people. That is not going to produce change. There are two different ways to look at this, and they're both important. On the human level, we can understand how free will works. It's important that human beings make choices that promote the good of humanity and that do not promote more conflict, more separation, more anger, more polarization. So every human being, every group, every nation has a role to play in this. But on the divine level, there's a limit to what can happen, and the limit is prior to anything being destroyed. We are already seeing a great deal of destruction in relation to the changes in the Earth's ecology and habitats. And that is all tragic, and it is all part of the outpicturing of the forces of separation. It's the legacy of the past. What we're witnessing now is the legacy of the past coming home to roost, let's say, to use that expression. What we have sowed, we are reaping, which is the climate change, the loss of species, the loss of habitats, all the things that we hold to be so precious that have been changed in recent decades. That's the legacy of the past. And we who are here now have to believe in the future so that we can participate in the creation of that future, even while those forces are still active, even while those are still active. The guardianship of the earth, the realms of light, have been called by many names. Other traditions have other names for them. They are an active presence within the earth's consciousness and within the consciousness of many embodied beings. And they can be called upon to foster unity. When light and unity are needed, they can be called upon. It's harder to do that when people justify that conflict is inevitable and that There's no such thing as reconciliation or compromise. When people are adamant in that place, it's hard to bring the light in, but it's still possible if you can hold on to your own alignment. So I bring this up today, beloved ones, because it's no longer possible to separate your individual life from the collective life of the world and the collective life of this country. And this country, I want to add something important here. This country has a pivotal role to play in the future destiny of the divine plan, the future unfoldment, I should say. This country is a country that is meant to bring forth the ideals that will manifest the new forms of government, not only in this country, but on a world level. Just as in the past, it brought forth the idea of democracy and the idea of freedom of the individual in a way that had never been articulated in that way before. That represented the destiny of this country, to bring forth the ideal for the benefit of the world. We are in the second generation of that articulation. I said we're the second constitutional convention, and we are. The second articulation of those ideals is holding the values of light in the presence of darkness, holding them strongly enough so that the past can be let go of and new structures of government and social relationships can be constructed. You may not think of your life as that important as to say we are the second constitutional convention, but I urge you to change your mind about that, because anybody has a choice to make about how much they participate in the creation of the new. You came to the earth at this time, therefore you have a role to play, and you can choose to participate as it fits in with your life circumstances, as you can feel it interfacing with what's possible within your own life. This country is meant to bring about a new light for the world, and it will begin in this country. The spiritual foundation for that light that will extend outward on the new dimension, on the new consciousness level, will begin in this country in terms of the transformation. So it's important when we talk about the word destiny and also think about a nation, that we not think parochially. You know, parochially means you think about separateness of nations and you think about the past history, which is each nation acting in its own behalf. That is not what I'm talking about. That's the past vision of the role of nations, primarily directed by self-interest. That is not the future. That is the past. This nation's destiny is to bring light to the world, to create unity and a harmony among nations, and to begin with the vibrational foundation of that, not to talk about it, that will happen also, but to create the vibrational underpinning of how change will take place. That's what this country is coming into being now to do, to create the vibrational foundation for the new structures of government and life on the second cycle of this planetary unfoldment. And you are here to play a part in that. No matter what your life looks like, you are here to play a part in that. And the first part you need to play is through alignment with the light that remains solid, steady, and as unwavering as it can be in the presence of forces that are forceful enough to knock you over or tilt you sideways, if not knock you over. That's your job. So I am most grateful to you for taking part in this conversation. I have a great deal more to say in more detail, and I welcome questions because I'm creating, and hopefully with you, a new worldview here, a new picture of the future and the foundation vibrationally for what will be the new Republic of America. And I urge you and invite you and welcome you to please think whether you can share in this moment, because it is an extraordinary moment to be here on the earth and you have a part to play. Thank you, beloved ones, for sharing in this moment with me. Om Namo Bhagavate, Om Namo Namaha. I bow to the Supreme Being that lives within all. Namaskar.